Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Ahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. It's in one of my very last videos, we recently launched our Urdu book. So, as I said in that book, I don't envisage myself or any of us working on that project anymore. But there may be people out there who have a lot of zeal in studying Urdu, teaching Urdu. So I thought some of the resources that I had compiled or I had gathered, some books I had gathered and collected, I can share those with you. Anybody's interested, and he can use those resources to move on. So one of the first books I had used, I mentioned in there may have mentioned, is this book called An Essential Grammar, Urdu An Essential Grammar by Ruth, Laila, and I'm assuming it's Schmidt, I'm not sure of the spelling. Now, again, it's in English, and then they explain certain rules, and the layout is, you have to get familiar with the layout. It's a very useful, it's got many rules, but it's a bit challenging working your way around the book, figuring out the structure of the book. But it is a very useful book, and it has lots of grammar. One of the first books I had used to when I started studying the Urdu grammar. So that's something useful. It's probably maybe a bit expensive, and it's a bit difficult to get your head around and the structure. But it is useful once you understand how it's laid out, the way she's laid out the verbs and the sentence, etc. Okay, that's the first book. The second book I came across is called the Qawaid-e-Urdu by Maulana Abdul Sahib. He's known as Baba-e-Urdu. So this is, I'm not an expert in Urdu or anything, but as far as people have spoken to regarding this, they consider this as one of the, the essential in Urdu grammar. It's got one of the main. He even goes really deep. For example, at the beginning he discusses why the alphabet is, why is alif called alif, and why is ba called ba, and why is te called te, and he's got sarf and nahwa, and he's got a lot. Is quite deep. So again, it's not a beginner book, but if you are researching and you're going deeper into the study of language, it is useful, and it covers almost all of the rules. So this is one of the go-to books if you want to study the Urdu grammar. After that, there's a few others here and there, but this is probably the main one, and this is also quite useful. There's another one. I remember one of my classmates had this book. It's called Darsi Urdu Composition. So I had begged him to please sell it to me when he was in Madrasa. I even gave him an offer for a ridiculous price. He didn't budge, he didn't sell it. But I came across the PDF later on, and I printed it and I got it. It's got grammar rules, but more than the grammar, it has what you would say at the end. It has, for example, the useful part about this, for example, it has proverbs, and it explains the proverbs. So for example, if you go over here, he's got muhawara, page 255. So for example, ab hona, what does it mean? It's got istimal. So that's quite useful. And he's got many of them. He's got loads of them in there. After that, he goes on to, he's got a lot of practice. For example, namune ke mukalamat. He's got a few letters. He's got a few conversations. So it's got quite a bit of practice at the end. So a few stories. So more than the grammar. So these don't have any practice as such. It's basically pure grammar. This has a bit of grammar at the beginning, but not that much, or it does have, but more the benefit of this book is the actual the exercises and the proverbs at the end. So it's also quite, if it's purely in Urdu, no English. Even obviously the Maulana Abdul is also purely Urdu. After that, another one I came across, this is quite good. It's very, very, it's got a lot of detail. I came across it quite late in my research, so I never used it fully. But it does have quite a few rules. The interesting thing is actually published by it's published by the printed at the Baptist Mission Press and published by the author at Jailani in 1919. So what it seems that they used this book, what I assume, what I think is printed by the Christian missionaries to teach the English-speaking. But in 1990, it was taught. It was used to. It cost 10 rupees that time. It was used by the missionaries in India to teach the English-speaking Christians to then do da'wah of Christianity within the locals. That's what I assume. It's got English exercises, English vocabulary. So it's not only theory, and it's got lots of practice, etc. So this is quite useful, but I didn't use it a lot because I came across it quite late. So I didn't have a chance to refer to as much as I do have some notes, and I mentioned a few things. It has got good points. It's got good vocabulary. It's got good exercises. But it's something that can also be used. PDF is available. I don't know if it's available in print, but if you Google it, it's called the Modern Hindustani Scholar. Or it's called the Modern Hindustani Scholar or the Munshi. So this is also something that can be useful in research. Then this is quite useful. This is almost everybody's seen this one. Teach yourself Urdu in 2 months. This is quite good for beginner. This is also a good option. This is also a good option. If you don't use my books, you can also use this book. This is quite useful. But again, it's got the problem. It's got the writing in English transliteration, so that's a bit of a disadvantage. It doesn't have a lot. So the vocabulary is in Urdu. The vocabulary is in the Urdu text and Urdu font, but the letters in transliteration, which kind of makes it difficult. These are also quite useful. It's called Urdu Qawaid-e-Insha, Pardazi or Pardazi. Not sure I pronounce the word. It's got vocabulary. It's got grammar. And this is part 1, and then it's coming to part 2 here. I don't remember where I got it from. I probably ordered it from somewhere. Again, this has got here. Again, muhawarat, unka istimal. It's got proverbs. It's got how to use them. It's got a few stories at the end, a few letters, similar to the other books. So this is also quite useful. It's also quite well known. This book I came across is called Introductory Urdu. It's printed by C.M. Naim in the South Asia Language and Area Center, University of Chicago. It's 2 volumes. Again, at the beginning it's a good book, but the issue is transliteration. It's in English, so I found that personally difficult. If you don't have the Urdu in text, I find it hard to use that. But again, it's got good rules. It explains quite a few things that are very useful. But I find because it's not written in Urdu text, I just found that very, very, very difficult to read and understand what's going on there. But he has got some beneficial rules. It's something that's, when again goes deep into the Urdu language, he could probably benefit from. It's got exercises towards it. It's not exercise heavy or practice heavy. It is more initially, in the beginning, more grammar based. Towards the end, you have exercises and you have practice, etc. Part 2 kind of changes. In part 2, what happens towards the end, you have like a story. And then after that, you have the story in the Urdu font. And then after that, you probably have you have maybe some rules regarding notes, explaining, relating to that story. So the part 2 is quite good in aspect. It has rules, it has a story, a text, then it has exercises, it has notes. So in that aspect, the structure follows in that quite. So it's in that aspect, it's quite useful. So the part 2, especially part 1, I found it difficult because there's no Urdu text or transliteration, which made it very difficult for me to follow. After that, you have to teach yourself Urdu in 2 months. There's one called here, teach yourself Urdu in a month. So it's half the size. But again, it's useful. I didn't have anything new or anything additional. But it's something I never use it, but I did buy it. I didn't have much use for it. Oxford Dictionary, I read through this quite a lot. It had a lot of exercises. There's an Oxford Elementary Learner Dictionary. It's a dictionary, but the thing about the dictionary, it has a lot for every word. It has a lot of so for every word. It's not just an explanation of the word. It actually has an example. So for example, we have the word here. I might have a few highlighted here. So if you have an exercise, if you have a word that they're explaining, along with the explanation of the word, have an example. So that's quite useful. So it's not just a dictionary with the definition or the translation from English to Urdu. It will actually give you an example. So for example, if you got here, so for inside or inside out, they'll give an example. Ulta pehna hua hai. To inquire into something. So police qatl ke baare mein tahqiqat kar rahi hai. So instead of saying inquire means tahqiqat, they will give an example. So this is quite a useful dictionary. Not only just a translation, but examples is quite useful. This is Oxford Picture Dictionary. What they basically have is a set of pictures and in all languages. So again, it does have vocabulary, etc. in Urdu. So the words, beverages, and all that. But again, without exercises, it's quite difficult to keep in mind. But if you want to find vocabulary, so you have, for example, a hotel. So then pictures of different things. Then you have the doorman. So here, darban, ghumne wala darwaza for revolving door. It could be useful, but it's something you can look into. This is something I never got a chance to use that much. It's called the Urdu Ataliq or self-instructor, Ataliq. Again, it's got basic rules and it's got things. What I use it for towards the end, he had stories and he had proverbs, and so this is what we use it for towards the end. He had hikayat, so a few stories and so practice. So some of these I've even incorporated into the into my book. Okay, and in terms of Urdu dictionaries, you get a few of them from Urdu to English. That's nothing standard. That's nothing special. You get Urdu to English, English to Urdu. For Urdu to Urdu, there's two of them one is very common. That's Firozul Laghat. I think almost everybody knows about that. There's also another one called Farhang-e-Asifiya. So this is Farhang-e-Asifiya. It's actually 2 volumes. This is volume 1 and 2, and volume 2 and 3 is the same size. So again, it's very detailed and very in depth. I didn't use it much. I got it quite late in my research. So I didn't refer to it as much as I referred to the Firozul Laghat. But from what I've read from other people, they said this is a bit more detailed than the Firozul Laghat. So this is the majority of the resources that I had used. So you can, if somebody's researching into the language, they can use these resources and further their studies. And that's about it. Obviously, you have other Allah Ke Rasool, you have Kahaniya, you have Achhi Baatein, this for literature, and not literature, but just to get practice. But in terms of grammar, sarf, nahu, and the language structure itself, these are the books that I had used. So anybody who wants to research language, they can use these books. Maybe I've used them, inshallah. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa nashhadu la ilaha illa anta, wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.